what I found is there's some kind of judgment on self for like how we learn, and that's like not as good of a way as some people learn. And maybe that comes from school or teachers or whatever. The school system is really not set up for creative learning. It's more set up for that old school, assembly line, factory worker, like do as you're told, learn these facts, that type of thing. And really the world just doesn't work like that, especially music. Understanding how we best learn that is very important. Welcome back to the Drum Show podcast. This topic actually today is super important as to you making progress quickly on the drums. It's not enough just to kind of show up and practice. It really helps if we know more about how we learn, better ways to start learning the drums. And so one of the most important things you can really assess and understand is what is your drum learning style. And there's not like, I guess I could define 4 or 5 specific learning styles, but everybody is very, very unique. And I find that people are not just, let's say, they're just an auditory learner, or they're just a visual learner, or they're a calisthenic learner. They touch, they need touch, those kinds of things. I find that they're a mixture of learning styles, as well as some different things based upon their situation. So, that it's going to change if you have to do like a split practice plan because you've got a busy life and you got kids and you got work and you need to practice at this time, but also, make sure you can get 10 minutes in at this time. And so really understanding how you learn as a person is really, really important to how we can better learn on the drums. Unfortunately, it's not a cookie cutter thing. I know that I had teachers that tried to make it that way. They were well-intentioned, and then I had teachers that fantastically catered things to the different learners. And so the first thing that I think that we need to understand is what does our life look like, and how are we going to incorporate the drums into that? So and you've heard me talk about this before, like what's the purpose? Why are you playing the drums? It really, everything drives back to purpose. What's the purpose of you playing the drums? And then from there we can start to dissect how we best learn and those types of things. But if we don't have a purpose, that makes motivation very, very hard. So it's like, I don't know, I was just bored and I'm just doing it. Okay, well that's a point. But now, like, are you working towards songs? Are you just doing it for stress relief? Are you doing it to jam with some friends? Does your church need a drummer? Do you want to get some side income going because you want to join a band? All of those things are reasons for that. And then when we get in the practice time, it really gets down to how do we best learn. I have some students that are very analytical, so they need things explained on a very analytical level. So like, what does this note mean? What does that note mean? Where am I putting it? What's coming right after that? So they need the whole process. And then I have some students that are much more of the creative mindset. So they're able to grasp the big picture of things, and they just want to create, and they want to flow, and they want to do that. And neither of those, that's the thing to understand, because a lot of times what I found is there's some kind of a judgment on self for like how we learn, and that's like not as good of a way as some people learn. And maybe that comes from school or teachers or whatever. The school system is really not set up for creative learning. It's more set up for that old school, assembly line, factory worker, like do as you're told, learn these facts, that type of thing. And really the world just doesn't work like that, especially music, because we can learn something but it's not just enough to learn it. We have to apply it. We have to be creative with it. And so understanding how we can best learn that is very important. So I've had some learners come in and be like, I'm not a traditional learner. I can't learn by sitting there and memorizing it. I have to visually see it, or I have to like repeat it to myself out loud. And I know that's not the way that normal people learn. Like I hear these things a lot, and it's like, well, wait a second. That's just as normal of a learning process as anyone else, And so I think first it's getting that judgment of like, this is not as good of a learning process as some other people are doing. They're like, they're visual learners, and that's better, or they can memorize that and that's better. They can hear it once and everybody is so different. But the key to being able to really swim in your own waters is understanding how to swim in those waters. It's understanding what your unique abilities are. Let me give you some examples. Really, it's better if I kind of give examples of different students I've had, because I've had a ton of students, right? I've got an online drum school that I've run now for, 13 years. We're going on year 14 now. Started in 2011, and in this October, it'll be 13 years. And, or will it be? No, it'll be 13 years. And I'm losing track. And in that time, I've worked with thousands of drummers. We do drum camps here every year. Had one last week. We got another one coming up next week. You can find links for all this information, by the way, in the video description or in the podcast description if you want to check out the online drum school, which I'd love to have you in there. I believe there's a free trial still running, and as well as the camps. Those are a ton of fun. They're an in-person event, high contact, high dollar, that type of thing. So I'd love to have you in those too. We have a 77% retention rate in those drum camps. So if you come, chances are you come back. A lot of people do. So, but you can check out all that stuff. And what I found is that everybody has just a little bit of a different way. And one of the biggest differences between players is like, I'm self-taught, or I'm not classically trained. We're not really classically trained in drumming, but a more organized, proper, go to a drum teacher, I went to a drum school, that kind of a thing. Those are the two big proponents, and most of the people who are self-taught are like, yeah, I'm self-taught, and they kind of downplay it. Whereas a lot of the self-taught players have much better ears. Now, this is a generalization. They have much better ears. What does that mean? It means that they were self-taught. They had to listen to the music and then interpret what that music was and try to learn it on the drums. And that's a very different way of learning than having someone give you, like this sheet music and say, okay, now we're going to read that sheet music. So you're reading everything. You really don't have to interpret the music. The music's interpreted for you, and all you have to do is read the music. Whereas maybe that person can't read the music, but they can interpret the music much better because that's what they've been having to do. So in one, you've got one person that can ingest the information from a page, and you have another person that you can play it for them and they can listen once and ingest it. So it's two different ways of learning. Neither is better or worse. They both have their pros and cons. People that are self-taught many times, song form as well as catching the nuances of what's going on within the music comes very easy to them. Those that are a little bit more, I would say, in a traditional drum teacher, school type of a setup, they're very good readers. They're very good at seeing the part and playing that part, but a lot of times they miss the big overall picture, or they miss how that it fits into the form, or they miss what the other musicians are doing because they're so focused on like what is being played on this piece of paper. This piece of paper is really all about, well, this one is actually telling all the other musicians too what they're doing, but it's all about me. This is all about me and what I'm doing, and whenever we're learning it from listening to the song, let's say we're self-taught and we're learning from like, I need to listen to this track and dissect it, that comes to a place where it's like, okay, that's a different animal, because we're having to listen to it, go try to play it, listen to it, go try to play it. And so when it comes to doing really understanding what you are, neither's better or worse. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, because they were self-taught, and now self-taught has a lot of drawbacks too. Many times there's technique issues because they didn't have somebody looking. Oftentimes you just have to adjust a few things, and what they find is they're like, well, I can't do this, or I can't play my hi-hat fast enough. Or they may have said that, last week I had a player, and he's like, I noticed a lot of players, so he watched a lot of videos, and he's like, I noticed they were doing like this up-down motion with their hand. I kind of am trying to do that. He had it down, and we tweaked it a little bit, and I showed him. I was like, okay, well, cool, that's kind of a molar pumping motion, so let me show you the technique behind that. I showed him, and he swam real quick after that, once he kind of saw that and understood it. There's a great quote that I have, and I forget who it's attributed to, but if you judge a fish by how well it climbs a tree, it's always a failure, right? So in other words, a fish wasn't meant to climb a tree, right? A squirrel wasn't meant to swim underwater. And we can go on and on with that. And so it's the same with humans. Just because we look like other people and we have the same makeup and build doesn't mean we learn exactly the same way, and our history is different. For those of you that are self-taught, I think that that's something that we're missing with a lot of players, and that's something that in drum camps we often are spending a lot of time discussing and dealing with, is people that come in and they can read sheet music very, very well. They don't know anything else about song form, they can't remember it, and they can't play it without the sheet music. And oftentimes their playing is stifled because, like, reading music is one skill. Playing the drums is another skill. Reading music while you're playing the drums and interpreting what's on the page, that is a separate skill than reading music and playing the drums, right? I can sit here and follow along with a song and read this piece of sheet music. I can read it like a book, okay? I can see a boom, I can sing it to myself. That's not playing the drums. And I can play the drums along to the song, or I can read that and interpret it on the drums, and that's a separate skill. And oftentimes we get stumbled up by doing that, and it's not their drumming that's the problem, it's not their reading that's the problem. They're trying to interpret it while they read, and that is the issue. So many times for people that come in like that, a successful camp looks like, hey, we're going to get you off that chart and we're going to get you to just play the song with no music, and that's a big success to them. That really wasn't an issue outside of classically trained players. So you had a classical flute player, violin player, you played an orchestra, piano player. Many times they are a piano player that's classically trained. Many times they are taught to play what's on the page, and that's it. There's no interpretation there. The page tells you. Is there dynamic marking? What is that dynamic marking? That's the interpretation. And so oftentimes it's very hard. So those were the people used to before the advent of really internet and tons of sheet music, and the sheet music follows along with some kind of game. It follows along with the music. Now that's not bad. Again, it's not bad. It's neither good nor bad. It's neutral. It's how we use it, right? It's only a stumbling block when it becomes a stumbling block. This podcast is brought to you by the Drum Better Daily program. That's actually my online drum school that I've run now for 12 plus years. Not only have I been playing the drums professionally since the age of 15, I've been teaching since the age of 18. Matter of fact, I talked to one of my first student a few days ago. I actually called him to see if he could sub a gig out for me. Daniel, love you, man. And he's still playing. He's still doing it on a pro level. I would love to have you go check it out at stevensdrumshed.com. You can find a link to that in the show notes or video description, whichever platform you're watching it on. But it truly is a community of like-minded drummers where we are striving to just be the best that we can be at the drums. In addition to over 70 pre-recorded drum courses, there's also a tech talk area where we talk about everything technology related as it pertains to the drums, e-kits, recording, doing videos, all of that stuff. There are forums where you can hang out with the other students as well. We do 2 live video student calls every week that you can join if you'd like to. We do guest artist calls monthly, and I'll even make you a personalized lesson plan if that's what you need. Yes, we talk about the nuts and bolts of drumming. Yes, I give you exercises, but we also talk a lot about how to practice more efficiently, how to practice better, and how to get more out of your practice time. I know you're just like me. You're busy, you're being pulled by work, by family, by friends, by other responsibilities. Whenever you practice, you really want to see gains and have it be productive. That is what we focus on in the Drum Better Daily program. I'll have to say personally, it's been really cool because some of these students I've worked with for over 12 years, we started running drum camps last year in 2022, and I got to meet some of them in person for the first time. Those drum camps have been selling out. They've been just blowing my mind with how much fun they are and how great a time it is to bring the community together in person. A community that was started online and has been going online strong now for over 12 years. I'd love to have you be a part of it. Whereas you have people that are self-taught, I can play it for them once. And they're like, oh yeah, I got it. And they have the form, and they may need to tighten up some of the fills and get more in the style, but they really have the overall gist of what's going on with that song. And so neither's better or worse. You have some drummers that visually learn very well by watching. We have in the drum camps, we'll have some people that say, I'm watching the person in front of me, or I try to make sure that I sing what we're trying to play. I print it out on sheet music for them. I count it. I try to play it for them. So anybody, how they're, if it's visual, if it's auditory, if they need to play it themselves and work it out, all of those things, I try to include in that. But many of them will say, I watched the person in front of me because I saw that they're very good at reading. And so I'm not so great at reading. So what I do is I watch what they're reading, and then I kind of connect it to that. But really I watch them first and get going with the exercise. And sometimes they say that like, that's, it's just what I got to do. And it's like, but that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, right? We're using other people to help us kind of get to where we want to go, and that's okay. Some people need to hear it played, and then we have special cases where maybe someone has trouble reading, and I didn't connect this for a long time as a teacher, and I don't know why I didn't. So let's say we have someone that's dyslexic. They have a reading issue. Like there is a physical issue there if they do not see words the way other people see words. But oftentimes they're very good at other things. And I was speaking to a student about this, and I said, I was speaking to my son about this too. He's struggled with reading and dyslexia, and I said, look, we made up like writing, right? And we made up books, and we made up printing it on paper. So you can't do this made up thing very well that humans made up. Right? Some other people can do that very well, and you just happen like you can't. But there are other things that you're extremely good at. So let's rely on those, because the chances of you having to stand up and read a book in front of people are like slim to none, right? Let's figure out ways around that. And so what happened is I've taught several students with dyslexia now. They're very good at hearing something and playing it. They're not good at reading sheet music. And that makes sense, right? Because dyslexia is an issue with how we see things on a written page. So it only makes sense that that would also be a problem area for them. So instead of, and I've worked with them where they feel that they have to learn it how other people, so in other words, they have to read the sheet music, they feel bad about that, or they feel it's a lesser way of learning. I'm not learning as good as others. No, it's just different. Everyone learns different. And that's the beauty of being unique individuals. And the sooner we learn that on the drums and stop judging how we learn, the faster we're going to pick it up, because we don't have all this mental baggage about like, oh man, I'm not learning it like so-and-so learned it, so it must not be real learning. Can you play it? Then it's real learning. Congratulations, it's like Pinocchio. Congratulations, you're a real boy. It's like it's real learning. And so with those that I've worked with that have had dyslexia, we have really had to work through how to do that. And it's really, I told him, I said, close the book. I'm going to read the exercises for you. I need you to play it back for me. So if I say exercise, we're going to play exercise 3. I will explain it to them, and then I will play exercise 3, and then they will play it after me. So they pair it after me, which is something called mirror learning. Mirror learning is one of the first things we do as a child. Like we look at what other people are doing, and children try to mimic what those people are doing. It's one of the first ways it is the first way that we learn as children. It's a very, very effective way of learning. And so it's not second at all, right? So really it comes down to, another thing that we might look at, and I know this is kind of like, I thought you were going to give me a checklist of this is what type of learner I am. Well, you got to figure that out. I've taken tons of personality quizzes. I've taken tons of like, what are my strengths and those types. I suggest you go find those tests and help, don't look at them as like, this is the end all be all and this is me in a box. That's not. I found myself growing out of some of those things. I found myself growing into other areas. And I found that I'm like, okay, well, this is mostly right, but this over here, that's not correct. I don't do that, right? And so you can look at what are your strengths. Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? If you're an extrovert, who is Dave Grohl? I'm not saying he's an extrovert. I'm just saying Dave Grohl, is quoted like, practice drums by yourself. That sounds awful. And those types of people typically like to get in groups of people and play. They're band drummers. And they really get better in those instances where it's like, oh, I got to get together with my buddies, and so I'm learning this thing. And some are introverts. I'm on the large side of introvert, so I like large chunks of time where I can spend by myself, really immersed in something. Then it comes down to like, what kind of a worker are you? Are you more of a creator schedule, or are you more of a manager schedule? A manager's schedule is somebody that really think they love being able to check things off, all the things that they did that day. To them, having a day full of 20 meetings, that's like, I knocked them out. Boom, 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 boom. My wife loves this, and I'm not saying that's the only way she is, but she loves to be able to get up and just like in the day, just kind of knock out and check off all these things that she did. And I got this thing, and I got this, and a successful day to her is like, how many of those things was she able to do? A successful day to me, who is more of a creator's type of a calendar, for me is I like 3 or 4 hour chunks. And if it's not a 3 or 4 hour chunk, well, then I might as well just go do a bunch of tasks in an order. And even those tasks in an order, if it's going to be a day of meetings, I like that day of meetings to be like chunked together. For instance, after this, I have a student call, which will last about an hour, hour and 15 minutes. We do those every week in the members area. And then I have a meeting with a buddy of mine who wanted to do lunch. So I tagged that right with the student call. So now I have a chunk of about 3 hours that is meetings. This morning was content creation and podcast, right? This afternoon will be, and I'm actually working this evening, so this afternoon will be about a 3 hour chunk of practice and getting ready for the next camp I have and some upcoming lessons. And then tonight will be, I've got gear to put up around here. I've got to organize like lists and stuff. So that's the kind of learner I am. And knowing that, I don't do well plugging in just for 15 minutes in my practice time. It's very hard for me. Some other people are like, oh no, like 15 minutes in the morning, I boom, mark that off. And then I drank my coffee and boom, I got ready for work and man, I made the drive and they're checking all these things off. That's not me. I'm like, no, just leave me alone for like 4 hours and let me I love getting deep in a task. And to me, an hour into a task, I'm just getting going. And it's like, we got to leave already? Like I just got warmed up, So, knowing if you're that type of a person, maybe you want to split your practice up. Or if you go in for a large chunk of time, maybe you split it up into smaller chunks of time so you can check that off and be like, okay, and then you see, because maybe you seeing a 2 hour chunk or 1 hour chunk of you just practiced, you may be like, it was such a large chunk of time and I didn't get that much done. But if you can piece it off into hand technique for 15 minutes, hand and foot singles for whatever that is, and you're putting a 15, 20 minute check marks, well, then you got 3 or 4 things done. And to that type of a learner or a doer, that's very important. Whereas me, it's not so important I see how many things I got done in my practice time. I'm more concerned that I was able to plug in and get into that concentrated space and be able to create. Neither is better or worse. They're just different. It's different ways to function. And so understanding that, it took me a long time to understand that one small section of my life. Understanding that, I'm like, oh, well, I see why I get so frustrated when text messages interrupt me when I'm in the middle of a task or whenever. That's why you'll find me not checking email, batch check email during the week, beyond checking in to see if there is any tasks that need to be relegated during the morning or anything like that, any fires burning. I'd return emails twice a week, the same way with several other things in life as I batch those so that they're not constant interruptions. So again, understanding all of these things about yourself really, really, really helps you to become a maximized learner, if you will. And we've done this with our kids. Jackson is our oldest. He's an awesome guy. He's a hard worker. He started his job at 15. He loves people. He loves getting together. But when he was learning, he plays the drums too. He's not a learner. He doesn't learn the same way as I do. He would prefer to put the music on and learn it like that. He's had trouble with reading. He has some dyslexia issues, and he loves doing that. He loves group events, getting his friends together here at the studio to jam. Those are fun things for him, and that motivates him to practice. And then, my second son, he has enough energy for like 18 people. And so he's got to be active, man. He's got to be up. If he's learning, man, he's got to be like engaged in it. And if he loves something, he can go super deep and concentrated on it. But the energy he has is just like, whew. But he's an extroverted introvert. So whenever he's in the room, like he's the life of the party. But then he's got to shut down. He's got to shut down and like hoodie over. He's got a hoodie up in his room and like zone in on a movie or something, like lights off, like it's his hoodied up time, right? So, and that's okay. It's just how we function. So, kind of the purpose of this is great, but this is one more thing that intersects with your life. And the more we can figure out what type of a person we are, which you do as you get older, and how we best learn, and stop judging that as like being better or worse. You're a very unique individual, and music is a very unique thing. And your uniqueness is actually going to be the strength that sets you apart from other people. I've turned down gigs before because I'm like, yeah, I'm not that guy for you. So this person is, and you should get them because I think they're going to do a better job. And that doesn't. Some players be like, oh, you should be able to do everything. No, you shouldn't. There's very few players that do everything well. You should know what you do well. And so anyway, I just wanted to kind of talk around like what is the best way to learn? What is your learning style? And give you some pointers and hopefully make it a little bit more of an enjoyable journey for you. Don't forget, there's some free stuff down in the show notes so you can find 30 Days to Better Doubles, 30 Days to Better Singles. I'd love for you to go grab those, download them, and then work through them. They really are fun programs. But no matter what you do, I'll see you here in the next episode.